Welcome into episode 267 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. Sources Say is brought to you, as always, by our good friends at Justice Dental. Visit one of their two Lexington locations on Blazer Parkway and Wellington Way by scheduling an appointment online at justicedental.com or by calling 859-543-0700. You can even send a text message to one of their friendly team members at the same number to ask a question or make an appointment. Now is a great time to schedule your dental cleaning. Dr. Thompson, Dr. Justice, and their team strive to provide you with good oral health in a comfortable environment. The Justice Dental team looks forward to seeing you soon. I am your host, Jack Pilgrim of Kentucky Sports Radio. Very happy to be joined live from Toronto. Look at this, Shawn. We are here. We are in action live from Toronto for the Globl Jam. After seeing you road trip down to North Augusta for the Peach Jam, now all the way up across the border in Toronto. It's been one hell of a 2-week stretch, Shawn, but we got basketball games to play, man.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. I was thinking about that today on my way back home, that this is the earliest we've ever got to look at a Kentucky basketball team, and that's really cool. Early July here, we're going to break down some games, going to talk about some players, going to recap some stuff from Peach Jam, and you're in Toronto, and I'm in Kentucky, and I wish I was there with you, but I know you're going to have a good week. I think BBN's going to have a good week, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch these guys and talk about them this week too.
So let's start, obviously, with Peach Jam first. I know everybody who's waiting at the edge of their seat to just get to the bottom of what happened or what's going to happen this week in Toronto. But you were down there at Peach Jam with me. A ton of talent. We were hanging around the coaching staff and seeing some generational talent for this upcoming season, but also 25, 26, and beyond. Shawn, some of your takeaways from your first Peach Jam in how many years?
It's my first Peach Jam ever. Actually, I've covered.
Right.
Yeah, I've covered every stop of the EYBL besides Peach Jam. I always had something else going on during that time, but it was good to get down there and experience the energy in that building. And there were some star-studded matchups too. I mean, there was some heavyweight battles with the Boozer twins and Cooper Flagg and AJ DeBonsa and all the guys that Kentucky's going back and forth watching, and the new guys that are emerging onto the scene, and just young future superstars is what I took away from this Peach Jam. Is there, and you mentioned it, you said the word generational. There's a couple of guys in there that are the best that we've seen at the high school level, two of the best in like the last 20 years. I know Jeff Goodman even said that. I put it out on a tweet. So you know, guys that have covered that event for years, even they noticed the difference in talent level. You had LeBron there. You had some Chris Paul, some other NBA guys. It was just a huge week in North Augusta. We had a lot of fun down there and got a lot of cool takeaways from it. And we hosted KSR.
We did do that. I knew you couldn't get through an individual monologue without bringing up your boy LeBron James being in the same room as the living legend himself. What was that like? I know he wasn't on the court, but he was there to watch this generational talent that clearly meant something to him, that, you know, he is the current generation, past generation, and now he's there to watch the upcoming generational talents and AJ DeBonsa, Cooper Flagg, the Boozer twins. What was it like kind of seeing him courtside at one of your personal idols?
Yeah, I don't share much about who I follow professionally other than the Reds and things, but I'm a big LeBron guy. Wherever LeBron goes, that's who I pull for. And I'm probably going to get slammed in the comments for that by some people, but LeBron's my GOAT because that's the guy that I grew up watching play the game when I was in elementary and middle school and into high school. So that was really cool. It was actually the first time that I ever got to see him. And I woke up early Saturday morning. I tried to get into the courts that he was coaching on the other day, and I couldn't get in because they just so many people when he was on court 1, court 2. But when he made court 3, you actually said it to me. I think it was Friday morning. You said, I forgot how big of a LeBron guy you are, as I left the hotel. And I was there like an hour before you and Jacob got down there just to watch LeBron in action and coach. So it was really cool to see that and then see him sit courtside. And the cool thing was that Vegas Elite game after it is when guys would make big plays, they would walk back down the floor and point at LeBron. And LeBron would, kind of applaud them and stuff. So those guys had fun with it too. And it just adds to the energy and atmosphere there. Rondo's with him. Carmelo Anthony was in the building. Those guys that have been at the level that these players hope to get to someday, it's really cool to kind of see it all come together. And that's the only event that you ever get to see that at.
And Shawn, I think it told a bigger story about just where things are right now in the sport of basketball. And I guess the lack of enthusiasm for this 2024 class. How, I mean, nobody was talking about anything Trey Johnson was doing. Nobody was talking about Boogie Flan. Nobody was talking, Billy Richmond was amazing during the regular season, had a very solid Peach Jam, but that wasn't even the conversation. The entire conversation was, what was AJ DeBonta doing? What was Cooper Flagg doing? What was, what were the Boozer twins doing in that 16U championship battle? And, reclass talk, who's going to be the next guy that's going to strengthen the 24? If anything, the conversation about 2024 was just how bad it was that they're going to have to steal some of the star talent from 2025 to make it a worthwhile class. Having some conversations that know with people around the program that know what the plan is or lack thereof for 2024. I genuinely am starting to lean toward a heavy reclass class for 2024 that I think that they're going to probably go all in on Billy Richmond, try to land him. Probably Carter Knox from there because of the legacy side of things. He's been a standout. Kentucky likes him a lot. But from there, Shawn, there's really not a clear guy. Like even Boogie Flan, he's really kind of tailed off lately, and he's been okay. But is he going to be the star running the show point guard for you next season? I'm starting to have my doubts about Kentucky making the 2024 class a serious one from the current crop of talent. Now, guys in 2025 that are thinking about making the jump, I think that's a whole different story. And we got to see a lot of that firsthand, just how good those 2025 kids are. Yeah,
you can tell the difference in talent level. That doesn't mean that 24 doesn't have some guys in it that project to be good college basketball players and future professionals, but it's just the talent difference when you move to 25 and then you move into 26 and look at some guys there too. And the crowds that Cooper Flagg drew and the crowds that AJ DeBonta drew, like it's just a different level. Like there was so much energy every time that Cooper Flagg took the floor that you thought it was like the Final Four of the NCAA tournament. Like just the buzz in the building. Every time he'd catch the ball and make a play or he'd make a block. Like DeBonta was the same way. Tyron Stokes doing things like, those are two guys that you talked a lot about this weekend and stuff about Kentucky. And it was good to just get there and see the level of talent. I mean, 16-year-old kids that have the weight of the world on their shoulders that are being billed as the next level superstars. That's a ton of pressure, but those guys put on a lot of impressive performances. They do it back-to-back days at a high level, and really cool event and really cool to see. I mean, look, every time Cooper Flagg was in action, AJ DeBonta, college coaches galore lined up along the sidelines for those guys.
And Shawn, look at even a guy like Jalil Bethea, who was the talk of the EYBL regular season, somebody that told me at Pangos that when John Calipari walks into a room, it's like God, seeing God. It's like that was a guy that everybody said, well, he's trending at the right time. Cal's just waiting to see him in person. The stars are going to align where they're going to meet in the middle and come together with an offer, and things could potentially trend rather quickly from there. And then John Calipari shows up for Jalil Bethea in team final, who was considered a heavy favorite to at least compete, maybe win the whole thing, but very, clearly a contender to at least be in the title game. They go in and they struggle, and Jalil Bethea, who wears his emotions on his sleeve for better and worse at times, almost has like a breakdown as he's in front of John Calipari. Cal's actively trying to decide whether or not this is a Kentucky offer or not. And every single possession, almost exhaustingly, just throwing a temper tantrum, throwing his hands up, complaining about not getting the ball, possession after possession after possession. And Cal walked out after less than a quarter. And even that, so that was like, so the one guy that could have been the trending at the right time, Cal extending that offer, even Cal said, you know what, I don't think this fits there. And I talked to people around the program after that, and I'm not thinking that an offer is in the works anytime soon. Maybe things change in the coming months or whatever as his high school season comes around. But to close out the grassroots circuit, there isn't an imminent plan to offer Jalil Bethea, the guy who had been seen as the next in line to get an offer. So if he's not getting one, and they're really not going all in on other 2024 guys besides Billy Richmond and maybe Carter Knox, I'm really starting to think that this could be a kind of a mixed bag of 2025 guys. We just saw Jaden Quaintance just announce his reclass up to 2024. Maybe that's a premier option for Kentucky, but it feels like Kentucky's going to get creative with this 2024 class because they kind of have to. I just don't see how you can build a contender with just these kids.
Yeah, you and I were sitting there watching Bethea together, and obviously this was my first look live at a lot of these guys. I didn't get to make it out to cover any of the first EYBL stops this spring, but you were telling me, hey, I want you to take a look at this guy. I want you to take a look at this guy. And me and you would just look at each other like every possession and go, man, like you can't have that type of emotion and that type of body language in this moment. Like emotions are part of the game, but you got to be able to channel those. And I thought that day he heard his opportunity. And sure enough, when Cal walked out, you looked at me and you said, that's not good. And sure enough, like that was a kid that we had our eye on, and you put it out right before the game that he's on offer watch, and he was up until that point. And Cal went to another floor, and so did Kentucky's assistants. They weren't there for the remainder of that game. So I'm all the time in coaching, we tell our kids that body language is probably the most important thing, especially when things are not going in your favor. Like you do not know who's sitting in the building watching you, but in that case, you know who's in the building. Like you've got to be able to hold it together. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to in that moment. And that's a challenge a lot of these kids face. I mean, like I said, it's the weight of the world on these guys. I mean, you got big time programs coming in there. You feel like maybe it's your one shot to have that opportunity to impress. But even if you're not playing well, there's other ways to impress. And I feel like some guys do that, some guys don't. And that's a struggle and a balance that you got to find on grassroots. And there's a lot of talent there at those events. And there's a lot of guys fighting for a lot of spots. But with Kentucky in 24, Jack, I think it really ties into talk about this roster too, about some guys that could possibly be long-term pieces to your program. And I think that maybe John Calipari had that in mind when he was closing out this roster with guys like Jordan Burks and, Joey Hart, and you got a Duthiero, some guys that we kind of project and see down the road as possibly being in a Kentucky jersey this time next summer and moving into a new calendar year within the university and the program. So I think that's something to talk about. Obviously, reclass options from 25 to 24. We know there's some guys that we think Kentucky could keep an eye on. They've also recently extended a couple of new offers and things to 24. So you're finding it. You put it out in some notes and stuff this weekend, and I know that me and you talked about it, that there certainly will be a plan. It's going to be a collection of things happening for Kentucky to put a 24 class together. But it also could be a year where maybe they are more active in the portal than they have been the last 2 years, and they probably will have to be, depending on how many guys leave from this roster or return from this current roster that we're about to watch here tomorrow.
Yeah, so Jaden Quaintance was the 24 guy that the new offer, at least in the last month or two, that he's kind of trending the right direction. He's a 24 now, announcing his reclass. Kentucky loves him. He's very open to the pro route. Kentucky is understanding of the pro route being a serious option for him. So that's one Kentucky's kind of zeroing in on and seeing where things stand there. That would be an immediate game changer in my eyes. I think if you're going to lose on Flory Badunga the way they lost on him, to replace that premier option with a guy like Jaden Quaintance would be an absolute home run. And if Kentucky's able to make that happen, props to them. They also just offered Peach Jam winner Patrick Ngamba, who has been, for my money, the biggest stock riser among guys who really, not from a blue blood standpoint, really not one of those types of guys early on in the EYBL season, and just really kind of continued to trek forward and upward and led his team to a Peach Jam championship. So he's definitely a new name to keep an eye on. He announced today a new Final 8, and Kentucky's right there in that one. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. But again, the conversation's about 2025 and that talent. And if you could steal some of those types of guys, Cooper Flagg, I know there's a lot of talk about Duke, and if not Duke, potentially the pro route being a very serious option for him. But Cooper Flagg was a guy who clearly doesn't need another year of high school basketball. He just doesn't. But him battling against the Boozer twins, but specifically Cam Boozer, talk about those matchups and seeing those two against each other, those two individually, and Kentucky's trying for both. We'll talk in a minute about their chances with the Boozers, but what could their potential impact be at a place like Kentucky?
It'd be significant. I mean, if you could get the Boozer twins, you get 2 for 1 there with those guys, and ended up winning Peach Jam at their level of play. So I mean, two winners, two guys that are extremely talented, and those matchups against Cooper and stuff, those were a lot of fun. I know that was one that was on TV over the weekend and stuff, where guys could see it and stream it and things, and get to see those guys in action. But I think everyone thought, Jack, that the Boozer twins were just automatically a lot to Duke. I think even us in media and anyone involved with college basketball, I'm close friends with a Duke fan. I have been for my entire life, and he thought it too, that Duke would be a certain lock. But the more that things come out, I don't think that that's the case. And I know that that's something that you put out over the weekend too, that's not certainly a done deal, that the kind of the commitment to Duke was more with Coach K, the loyalty there, than it was with Jon Scheyer and where the program is now. Kentucky sounds like they certainly have a chance at those two guys. And if you get those two, that'd be a great start for a recruiting class, and really two solid pieces to build around. And would be, I don't know if you could call it an upset, like when it comes down to it, but if you're able to get a legendary player like Carlos Boozer's twin sons at Kentucky, a rival blue blood school, it would probably be a pretty big recruiting upset, because when you think of guys like that, you instantly connect them to the program that they played for. Same thing like a Reed Shepherd at Kentucky. Like, it would have been crazy to watch Reed Shepherd suit up and play somewhere else other than the place where his mom and dad played. That I know that's a completely different thing, being an in-state kid. But if Kentucky were able to get those two, it would be a significant win and a step in the right direction for that recruiting class in itself. And then Cooper Flagg too. I mean, is it professional route? Is it college route? I know Duke was sitting courtside, with Jay and Jon Scheyer there and multiple assistant coaches. And I know that they're going all in for that one and things. That's one that's kind of hard to follow and kind of see where it's at the moment. But that's a guy that would succeed right now in college basketball if he were to suit up and play. That's how talented he is. And that kind of makes it appealing to see exactly what he does. Does he choose to go like a G League route? Does he go as an overseas route? Or is it college? It would be good for the collegiate game if these guys were to play college basketball together. That's the thing. Whether they go to Duke, Kentucky, Carolina, it would be a good thing for the collegiate game to see those talented players play a season of college basketball before pursuing a professional career. But look, Kentucky's going to be right there and trying to go, blow for blow for these talented pieces. And there's a lot of talented guys coming up after 24 when you get into 25 and 26. I mean, it's loaded.
And I want to make it clear, because I put it out there that the Boozers are considering Kentucky, and I do think that they're going to get a visit to Kentucky is going to get a visit from them. There was I talking to Kentucky back in January. They specifically said, I mean, we might kick the tires on that, but we know it's a lost cause. We're not going to get the Boozers. So it doesn't make any sense for us to waste our time. So there was an understanding of they're a lock to Duke conversation that was very apparent and clear. Since then, however, they have decided to ramp things up, and for one reason or another, believe that they are right there in the thick of things. And I do think that that's something to keep a very close eye on. And yes, as you said, Shawn, what I've heard, and this did not come from Kentucky, this came from national agent side of things and other schools that are trying to get in the mix, and people associated with the Night Riders AAU program and a bunch of different areas that say their excitement level when they got this Kentucky offer, Shawn, was night and day difference from when Duke offered. That Dad's loyalty was to Coach K. That's where the relationship lied. And now that, Jon Scheyer came 10 years after Carlos Boozer came. It's not like he has this, close relationship with him. It was directly a relationship with Coach K. Now, me saying that Kentucky is in a sneaky, strong spot for the Boozers and that they are competing for the Boozers does not mean that it's a lock to Kentucky and they hate Duke and they hate Jon Scheyer. Like, that's not the case. And there is still a very obvious chance that they end up at Duke. That's not what I'm saying. But there were way too many people that know this recruitment infinitely more than I do, making it very clear that these kids are not a lot, they're not talking behind the scenes about Duke. They're not a secret pledge to Duke. They're not like, there's not this excitement about the Duke program that you would expect for Duke locks. They love John Calipari. They love the Kentucky program. They like the idea of kind of forging their own path and kind of doing their own thing. That's something new and fresh, and they are intrigued with that idea. There is a very real chance that they end up at Duke, but there's also a chance that they do their own thing and end up at Kentucky, and that's why it's worth noting to put that out there. When John Calipari is courtside with Orlando Antigua and Chin Coleman and other representatives that matter in this world, that they're not wasting their time. They're sitting there for a reason when they did not do the same back in January. Like there's a reason why they're sitting courtside. It's because they have received the same intel that I had, that these kids are open to listening, and really that's all that matters. If they think they got a shot, then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like you said, them sitting there tells you that there's something there that makes them think, okay, it's worth sitting here and watching and showing face and actively recruiting and trying to get a visit. And if they get a visit, I think that's a win in itself, is that you can at least get them on your campus and show them your program and see where things go. And you got a guy like Cooper, let's say that he ends up at Duke and he's in that class, like then it forces other guys to kind of look and say, okay, is there a spot for me to go play there? I mean, that's a guy that's going to receive a lot of attention, get the ball in his hands a lot. Like that maybe forces some shakeup and stuff in the recruiting class. And another thing with 24, and I know the names there on the side of the screen with Jasper Johnson, like does that end up being a reclass candidate for Kentucky in 24, who looked really impressive at Peach Jam and done some things well, an in-state guy that just left the state to go play at Link Academy. Like that's another name to watch and see how Kentucky tries to get creative with putting its 24 class together. I think the 2024 makeup of recruiting will look significantly different than what Kentucky just did. Took a lot of freshmen. I don't think you're going to see as many freshmen on the roster a year from now. I think you're going to see some portal pieces added. You're going to see some returning pieces, but you will still have some freshmen. There'll be some reclassifications. What happens with Somto? I don't know. Like, does he stick in 24? Does he end up making it to this roster? Like, I don't think you can close the book on any of those things yet until we probably get midway through the year and see, or at least get to August. I think getting to August is probably the first thing with him, and then seeing where it goes from there. Kentucky fans will actually get a look at him pretty soon too, and get a chance to watch him play.
Yeah, that's going to be really cool. But before we move on to Globl Jam and why we're here in the first place, AJ DeBonsa, that's a name, and I guess we'll tie that in with Tyron Stokes. I have heard from numerous places that Tyron Stokes is somebody that grew up in Louisville, likes the Kentucky program a lot. Kentucky is in love with this kid and just believe that he's a college-ready player right now, and that's definitely a name to keep an eye on. He's in the class of 2026. AJ DeBonsa is a 2026 prospect who every tie to Terrence Clark you could imagine, idolized him, considered him a cousin growing up and living in the Boston area, plays for the same Expressions Elite program that Terrence played for. And I talked to him extensively down at Peach Jam about just their relationship. And it's the same people running that recruitment that Terrence Clark did. That there are a lot of ties. It's not a done deal. I mean, this is, again, up there with Cooper Flagg as a generational talent, one of the best in the world right now. That's a kid that Kentucky knows the connections, and they're going to try to take advantage of that. Now, they're playing together at Prolific Prep this upcoming season, Tyron Stokes and AJ DeBonsa together. Is there a chance they could both reclass up to 2025? Physically, they're able to. I've been told that AJ is on the right track academically and could make that happen. I've been told that there are a couple hiccups to get through for Tyron Stokes to make that a possibility, that it's not completely ruled out, but it would take a lot of work in short time to make that happen because he is behind right now. So it's just one of those deals that I think Kentucky is in a very solid spot with both of them. And it's an amazing thing because they're top 3 in their class, regardless of when they play college basketball. But it may be a 2025 thing for AJ DeBonsa and 2026 thing for Tyron Stokes, Shawn. But I do like Kentucky's chances for both of them.
And the cool thing would be those two being together. It gives Kentucky an opportunity to recruit them together. You get looks together. That's something that you can pitch. And those are two talented guys that we watched go up against one another. And it would be really cool to see them play together at Kentucky and in college basketball. But the guy that you mentioned there, AJ DeBonsa, that of all the guys that you wanted me to watch at Peach Jam, that was the guy that you were like, you have to see this kid play. And you said it multiple times. And when I finally got to, you were texting me midway through the first half. You're like, so what do you think? Like, that's how good this kid is. Like, he's legit. Like, he's so much fun to watch. Does a lot of things well on the basketball floor, and another one of those guys that just you can throw the word generational out there, and you saw the picture of him and LeBron kind of surface over the weekend, and LeBron sitting there courtside, for that matchup, and really cool to see just how talented he is, even though he's young. Like, man, he is so much fun to watch, and if he were able to put on a Kentucky basketball jersey here in a year or two, like, goodness gracious, you talk about a guy that fans would love to see. Like, that's an elite talent that projects to be possible superstar level as a professional. Like, he has the makeup and the build to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. I know there are fans that are very, very much on the edge of their seat trying to just get excited for Kentucky basketball. And we get games starting literally at 1:30 tomorrow. Shawn, the Globl Jam starts. Kentucky set to take on Team Germany. Very interesting matchup. I don't recognize any of the individual names, but we're starting to get some buzz and some scoop and some conversations about what this team's going to look like, what their offensive identity is going to be, and kind of reasons to be excited about this group. And you're well aware of some of those rumblings and kind of, your own behind the scenes look at what this team is. And Shawn, I'm excited for you to kind of use this platform to share what you know and why you might be more excited today and in the recent days than maybe a week ago or a month ago, even, about this team.
Yeah, if you listen to us on KSR last Thursday, we talked a lot about offensively some things that you could see Kentucky do, and I've had a lot of people say, can you really tell those things just from watching highlights on Twitter that are posted? Yeah, you can see some things if you know how certain offenses work and certain looks and things that Kentucky have done in the past or other programs have done in the past, then you can pick up on those things when you're watching highlights just on Twitter, just from the spacing and a lot of stuff that you see on Twitter has been Kentucky going 4-on-4, and it's been a lot of their dribble drive set minus the big, minus the dunker spot with the two corners, two slots. You're going to see some Kentucky run some 5-out looks just from things that we've been hearing about some of these practices. And John Calipari put out a tweet, was it Sunday, that he put out the tweet and said there's going to be a randomness to how we play. And that randomness, Jack, is they're going to get out and run. They're going to get out and go. They're going to put it on the floor and play in space. They're going to take threes. They're going to shoot the ball. It's going to be an up-tempo style of play. That's what he means by randomness, a randomness to their game. And playing random, I think, is going to be for this team as early on as it is. It's going to take some of the pressure off of maybe having to execute sets, because we know that they don't have a ton of stuff in. There's no way. There's layers to the things that they're trying to do, and right now they got a lot of basic foundations and principles offensively. But you're going to see guys putting the ball on the floor, getting a ball by a defender's hip, beating a man off the bounce, taking open threes, and you're going to see Kentucky play in space more than they've played in the last couple of years. I don't think you're going to see a lot of post-ups. You're going to see open lanes and guys driving, kicking out to shooters, pitching, getting downhill, looking to score early and attack in transition. I think you're going to see Kentucky ahead of the game offensively, but a little bit behind the game defensively, which could cost them some of these games, but it's going to make for an exciting week of basketball. And I think you're going to come out of this. Now, if they go in tomorrow and they post up first possession and there's two bigs in the lane, I'm probably going to lose my mind, because everybody's going to think I've just completely just lost it and have no idea what I'm talking about. But I can assure you, you're going to see a different look offensively, and just the makeup of this team, the way they can do things. It's going to be exciting. And I can't wait till we actually have some video of it, and then everybody else can then see what I'm talking about. And then I can actually point to, okay, this is what I meant on KSR a week ago. This is what I meant by some get action. This is what I meant by maybe some zoom, some stuff that Kentucky's going to do. And they'll have some quick hitters built in. I think most of them will be for Justin Edwards. I think that's going to be probably the toughest assignment for any of these teams in Canada to have to match up with, because he's a guy, Jack, that he can get downhill in transition. He can knock down open shots. He can finish with either hand near the rim. He's not like athletically, he's not going to be a guy that's just going to climb on you and dunk on you every single trip. He has the ability to do that. But from what he could be in July to what he could be in March, I think you could see his game be polished more offensively. And to me, he has probably the highest offensive ceiling of anyone on this team.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that is when Cal talks about randomness, and we know that they're running four out, 5 out, and that Justin Edwards is one of those small ball 4 options, and the way he has that true 1 through 4 ability as a grab and go guy, that he's going to grab a rebound and initiate the offense, and the flexibility, and again the randomness that creates, because that creates a sense of panic for the defense, whether it's like, okay, now you have a 6'8" versatile long forward that is supposed to be, on the block posting up, or at the corner as the 4, and you have him initiating the offense and letting everything else run around, elsewhere. Like it creates a sense of panic and chaos and randomness that plays to Kentucky's advantage. Where I remember there was a quote that Marcus Smart, I'm a Celtics fan, and Joe Mazzulla prides himself on random basketball. And Marcus Smart said, yeah, that plays to our advantage because we know exactly what's going on. We have a rhyme and reason for everything that we do, but everybody else that watches us play thinks that we have no idea in hell what we're doing. And they're focusing on themselves, trying to pick up the pieces and go, okay, wait, what's going on here? That they don't even know how to adjust to us and game plan and scheme toward us. So there is it brings me back to the Kansas State staff and what they said after the game, after the tournament win, how Kentucky just didn't have the dudes. You can't run a random, you can't run a 4 or 5 out random offense if you don't have dudes, because that relies on guys going to get their own, creating their own shot, beating you off the dribble, and kind of creating that hectic chaos and establishing that. You don't have that unless you have dudes. And the reason why I think Cal is so confident in saying go play, I think, is because he's that confident in this group, and I am growing more and more confident in learning what we're learning. And I think as we see this week, especially the backcourt, continue to hear good things about Rob Dillingham and his adjustment, and how he's really kind of taken out the bad habits that he had before, developed at OTE, kind of had to do in that camp style kind of setting, that he's kind of buying into the structure and the team aspect of that, and kind of bringing out the best traits of him as a pure bucket getter, dynamic scorer and creator, while also playing off of what DJ does best as a downhill attacker and finisher around the rim and getting paint touches, while also playing complementary basketball to Antonio Reeves and complementary basketball to Justin Edwards. There's a lot to be excited about with this group. And I think when Cal says it's going to be random basketball, I think we should be listening very closely.
It's not a random word. Let's put it that way. It's, randomness means what it means, but it's intentionally in a tweet. There's meaning behind the word random, and you'll see that over the next few days. And does that translate to wins? I have no idea. I have no idea how Kentucky's going to defend. I have no idea how these young guys are going to react when the lights are on them and they're on TV and they're depended upon to make shots. What rotations are going to look like? What does Kentucky do at the 4-5? I have no idea. I don't know who's going to be on the floor when it comes down to crunch time and close games, because I think these games are going to be close and Kentucky's going to be in situational basketball. And that's what you want. You want situational basketball in July, in this opportunity. Kentucky didn't get situational basketball in the Bahamas a year ago. To me, honestly, they got absolutely nothing out of that trip other than just coming together and going swimming and maybe getting up and down the floor and doing some things. You're going to
we saw what that got for them, because chemistry was literally the name of the game all season long. So it's like you really didn't even get anything with that.
But that's a trip where you kind of piece together who you play. That's not the case here. You're competing for a gold medal. You're going up against guys that are older, that have some experience on your guys, and you're kind of just being thrown out there, and you've got a couple of practices under your belt, and you're going to play. And by playing random, you're going to see Kentucky making reads. You're not in transition. The one thing as a coach you don't do is you don't, when you're coming down, you got your secondary break, you got your primary break, you got your things you do, but you're playing random in transition. You're making reads. You're getting to the basket. You're making a read. If your defender's turned his head, you make a back cut, things like that. You're going to see Kentucky getting some things offensively out of transition that is random. Then you're going to see Kentucky initiating the dribble drive and getting it started out different ways. Traditionally, that would be the slot to slot, where they would drive and pitch and get downhill, or they would drive to the corner and pitch it and loop and things like that. You're going to see some ball screen to initiate this offense. That's something that has moved into dribble drive in recent years. It'll be a ball screen with Ugo coming to get it, and then Kentucky goes straight into dribble drive motion. Like, that's going to be some ways that you're going to see Kentucky initiate this offense and get it started. You're seeing some get action with Ugo coming there. That means we're throwing it to the big, and the guard is immediately following it and getting the ball back off of that handoff, and then right into something else. Does Kentucky get into its dribble drive doing some things like that? That's the stuff that's not random. The random is the up and down, which is probably 75% of this game, is in transition. You're either flowing from offense to defense after missed shot after made shot. Like, that's the randomness to basketball, and that's where the great teams succeed. And I think you're going to see Kentucky do a lot of that. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be an up-tempo style of play. I'm interested to see what Kentucky does defensively, and like we know they're going to play some man-to-man, but have they, are these guards really that good? Because if they are, then you're getting plenty of practice defending them in practice every single day. And I think too that John Welch is probably fundamentally done some things, and like, we raved about the addition to him to the staff a week ago. And then since then, they've added, Chuck Martin to the staff officially, which we'll get into. But with Welch, having a guy like that you can say player development, offensive mastermind, those are his things that he's going to make impacts with this roster. Fundamentally, he's able to maybe do things that can add to stuff that maybe Cal just doesn't have the time, and these other guys who are recruiting or busy doing other things that they can't do. I think you're going to see a more fundamentally sound Kentucky in the dribble drive than maybe what we saw 4, 5, 6 years ago when it was a primary part of what they did offensively. The guys eat up space and take some of that gap away and receive passes sooner to get downhill sooner. You're going to see some creative stuff from Kentucky, and I think it's going to be enough to get people excited about what it can be when there's 30, 40 practices under their belt instead of just maybe 4, 5, 6. That's it's going to be a small sample size, but enough excitement that do not get caught up in the wins and losses. Pay more attention to what is going on the floor, because I think it's going to look more exciting and better than what it did 5 months ago.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to ask you, Shawn, about lineups and what your expectations are. How creative do you think Cal is going to get, knowing what we know about, the kind of offensive philosophy that we're going to be working with? How do you think that's going to play into do you think we are going to see a lot of Justin Edwards, Trey Mitchell front courts? How much do you think I feel like the one X factor here with all this is Ugo, and just kind of if you're going all in on versatility and shooting at every position and maximizing spacing and shot making and play making, I feel like Ugo is the odd man out in that regard. But there's still a role for him on this roster. He's going to, and it's going to be a big one. Like I'm interested to and just seeing what the heck they can be and just how random and hectic things can get. Or do you think we're going to see, God forbid we get double big lineups? I'd really prefer not to do that. But how creative and tricky do you think Cal's going to get with the lineups?
Well, when you look at it, there's really not an option to go double big just with what they have on this roster. There's probably a greater opportunity to go no big with what they have. And I think game one is going to be kind of a fill it out game where you're going to see a lot of different guys get a lot of different minutes and a lot of different looks. But I think Cal's going to take that game film and maybe not into Thursday. I think the biggest transition is going to be from Thursday to Saturday, where they've got 2 games of film, 2 games, and you're talking, how is it 40 minutes? Is that the makeup of the game that they're playing? I think so. When it comes to
believe so, yeah.
Quarter length. So then you're going to have 80 minutes of basketball under your belt, and then you will see, I think, Cal settle in on whatever rotation has been the best in those 2 games. You're going to say, okay, this lineup did this together X amount of minutes, or this lineup look like this. We probably shouldn't go to this anymore. A lot of it too will depend on the game scout and who the opponent is and what the matchups are there. For Ugo, I think it's simple. I do think that Ugo will be behind on what Kentucky's doing offensively, which is from a skill set standpoint. But if he can do a couple of things well, then he fits it and he'll be able to play. Can he block shots on the defensive end, which then allows these guys on the perimeter at Kentucky to get out and run? That is an instant game changer that Kentucky has not had the last couple of years. A guy that can erase it, keep it in play, and that's a transition starter if you can block a shot. I don't care how you struggle offensively at times. If you can give Kentucky offense on the other end of the floor by starting transition, he'll play. Block shots and rim run and dunk balls. If he does those three things well in Canada, it's going to change how I feel about Ugo in the makeup of this roster. If he struggles in those areas, then I start to think that, okay, now what do we transition into between now and October? But that's why you're doing this trip. Whoever struggles in what area, then you have film on it. And you say, okay, you got 4 or 5 months. This is what you have to get better at if you want to play on this team. But I think it's going to influence a little bit about what Kentucky does offensively and some looks. But I think you're going to see Trey Mitchell run some 5. And look, if he is a 5-man spotted up with his feet set, he's knocking it down. I've watched a ton of film on him over the weekend. He doesn't miss often when his feet are set. His shot, it's pure. He also has the ability. He gets some assists too, Jack. Like he makes some plays for others. Like I think that's a guy that he likes the mid-range jumper. You are going to see some mid-range jumpers, but I think the thing that's going to be eliminated offensively is the long twos, the 17-footers, the 18-footers. Those are not going to be a part of Kentucky's shot chart. You will see some 10 to 12, 13-foot shots. You'll see some threes. You'll see some plays at the rim. That's a more balanced shot chart that I'm hoping to see. But I'm interested to see where Adou Thiero fits. Does he get a lot of looks at guard? Is it mainly 3-4? Starting lineup projections, though, I'm going to give you mine, then maybe you give me yours. For game 1, I think you're going to see DJ Wagner, Antonio Reeves, Justin Edwards, Adou Thiero, and Ugo. That's your 5 for game 1. You won't see Trey Mitchell.
Ooh.
But game 2 will be significantly different. I think you're going to see a different starting lineup the first couple of games. But that, to me, is game 1. You start Reeves, who's been in your program. Adou and Ugo, I think you reward them being in your program. And then you go with DJ and you go with Justin. But I think that lineup looks significantly different if Kentucky gets that gold medal, bronze medal game on Sunday.
Yeah, the loyalty is there. And remember, every game in the Bahamas, Cal went out of his way to put together random starting lineups. It was a different lineup every game. So I feel like we'll learn more like who's starting in the second half or who's maybe closing the game more so than who's actually starting, because I do think that there's going to be something to be said about Cal just kind of throwing stuff against the wall and just seeing what the heck happens. But man, I am so intrigued with the idea of that 4-guard lineup, just seeing what the heck you have with that Rob Dillingham at the 1. I really want to see him kind of take control and let him rock out a little bit. Like I want to see him at his like if you're going to be random, there is no more random human being on planet Earth than Rob Dillingham in terms of a basketball player. Like he's the epitome of random. So if you're going to do that, I feel like you got to embrace it. So I'm going Rob at the 1, DJ at the 2, Antonio Reeves at the 3, Justin Edwards at the 4, and Trey Mitchell at the 5. At least one of the games. Give it to me at least one of the games while we're up here, because I think that's going to be the lineup that gives you everything you're looking for in an offensively modern offense that fans have been craving. I think that's going to be the 5-man group that kind of sets the tone of what this team can be offensively and kind of raises the bar expectation-wise of what it can be.
It's true positionless basketball. It does not matter with that lineup. You got multiple guys that can get you initiated into your offense. You got multiple guys that can shoot the ball and take it off the bounce and do some stuff. Can that lineup rebound? I think would be the biggest question. Can they defend their positions? But it gives you an option there. I think Kentucky's going to be able to switch. Like John Calipari's best teams defensively, they've had 2 things. They've had the elite rim protector on the back end, which means then your guards, and that's the thing that was missing the last couple of years. Kentucky would get up and pressure the basketball, and Kentucky was not good at guarding the basketball. Like that defensive breakdowns late in the year, guarding the basketball hurt Kentucky the last 2 years in the NCAA tournament and in the SEC tournament. If you can't contain the basketball, you better have an eraser on the back end. If you have that guy that can do that, Jack, then it gives the other 4 guys on your team, it gives them a boost of confidence to pressure the basketball. And it's actually okay if you do get beat, because then you're funneling it into your big and your rim protector. You almost want them to take the shot. Can Ugo be that guy? If he is that guy, I think we have a completely different conversation about what Kentucky does at a starting lineup in November. If he becomes that guy, he plays because Cal said what? My best teams block shots.
Block shots. Yep.
And that kind of gives it away. But to me, the lineup that you just threw out is true positionless basketball on the offensive end of the floor, but it's also the same on the defensive end. You point switch a lot of stuff, and those were some of Kentucky's best teams: shot blocking and the ability to switch 1 through 5, or at least a guy like Justin Edwards. To me, I know he had a knack for getting some steals and putting himself in situations to get fast break opportunities in high school. That needs to now be a lockdown defender with his frame and his length. I think that's an area where you could see him really take his game to the next level, Jack. And if he does that, then I think he solidifies himself as one of the better players for sure in that draft a year from now. If he becomes a complete, total player all around, a great on-ball defender, a guy that gets in passing lanes, but can also do it at 3 levels on the other end offensively. Look, this is exciting. I love that we're talking about this in July. Like, this is so much better than Kentucky's got 7 scholarship players, or they're even going to get to 8 and 9. Like, look, it's exciting that we're here. I think you see excitement in the comments of this show today. And Sources Say is going to be right here taking you through this entire trip. And we're going to have a blast. Whether Kentucky goes 4-0, 1-3, 2-2, whatever it is, like, I'm choosing bigger picture here. If Kentucky loses tomorrow, there's not going to be a ton of negativity from me, because I'm pulling apart the positives of what I see from this trip, because I don't think you get caught up in the negatives here. There are no negatives to playing basketball in July. That's my message to every single person watching these games tomorrow. There are no negatives to what happens tomorrow on that floor. It's only positives. It does not matter. What matters is these guys are getting a taste of it. They're getting their feet wet. They're excited to play. And Kentucky basketball is on your TV screen in July. You haven't said that before. That's exciting.
I sure do love it. And we before we kind of start wrapping things up, you brought up, kind of just throwing Ugo in and just seeing what, like, this is a win-win situation for him no matter what. If he goes in and struggles as all get out, and he's not that, last year he was very, very strong as a help side shot blocker and a dynamic rim running threat who capable of catching lobs and throwing it down, but really limited elsewhere. Not great in face guarding situations, really not great at anything outside of 2 feet offensively. So if he hasn't taken that jump that I think Kentucky really does need, it at least puts Cal in position to say, okay, step 1, there's a clear blueprint, Ugo, of what you need to do. Look at the way you played against grown men. These are going to be the type of talents that you play in the SEC this upcoming year. This is what you have to work on. It's going to be clear as day. You're going to have all the film in the world to work on. Like, this is going to be a perfect opportunity in that front. Step 2, if it's too much and it's very abundantly clear that you need something else, you need more help, you also have the Santo Cyril as your kind of in your back pocket. If he was close enough to walk in May, he's clearly close enough to be able to graduate and get on campus at some point, January at the absolute latest, to contribute for this team. That'll give you, Aaron Bradshaw some time to get his feet wet, and maybe even give Ugo some more time to get, whatever the case is, you have that in your back pocket if necessary. And if things go really, really south, then you also have the August, transfer portal deadline with grad transfers. Cal brought that, mentioned that by name. And again, I even heard more talk about, like, in case things get crazy in August, we'll see what happens type talk in this past week. So I don't think that's something they're completely ruling out quite yet. And I think that's why this week is so crucial, to just see what this team is. if you got to make a move, there's still a little tiny window to make a move. And I think that's something that Cal has in his back pocket. And I think that's why he's so excited about just what this team can be and this opportunity more than anything. It's the perfect time to just kind of throw stuff out there, see what's working, see what's not working, see what's never going to work, and adjust on the fly from there. And I think that's going to open up the door for some creativity, maybe with roster moves or with lineups or whatever is necessary from there. I think this is the perfect timing more than anything. Playing games July 12th through July 16th. It's not at the end of August where you have no like that is your team from there moving forward. Like this gives you at least some type of flexibility in your back pocket to make a change if necessary.
Yeah, this is an evaluation period too for Kentucky to evaluate its roster and then see if it needs to be active when some of those grad transfers do hit the portal there in August. And on top of that, there's some comments about is Cal going to coach? I fully expect John Calipari to coach every game on this trip, and he said it now that they're wearing Team USA on their chest. I think it's different than just going to the Bahamas and playing some meaningless games just to see where you're at. But I think that being Team USA, I think in competing for a gold medal and gold there, I think you're going at it with a different approach representing the United States. I think that probably brings out the best in Cal and is, as young as this team is and stuff, I think it's important for him to get out there and get acclimated to them and them get used to him as well. But the thing you saw them put out on Twitter yesterday, Cal had a grin on his face and there's energy and excitement. I hope that he stays that way throughout this entire trip. Like, don't get screaming Cal, don't get over animated Cal. Like, I want Cal coaching hard, but I want a positive approach to it because, like I said, you got to see the big picture here. Is it going to be frustrating if Rob Dillingham goes in the game tomorrow and he takes a couple of fourth shots? Yes, and there's probably going to be the Twitter feed screaming, get him out of the game. And Cal will get him out of the game. But I think that finding positives, even when there's negatives, is probably the motto this week that I'm going to. I'm finding nothing but positives on tomorrow's episode of recapping. And then we'll kind of take it all at the end of the trip and say, okay, these were the negatives here. X, Y, Z is where Kentucky must get better if it wants to be an NCAA tournament team, second weekend, Final Four. I will be able to tell you a little bit more about what I think Kentucky projects to be after Sunday. But stay healthy on this trip. That's important. That's probably the one negative that you could get out of this trip is you lose another guy, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah, we'll see. I got a text that makes me think that we may be going small tomorrow. So we'll see what happens. We'll wrap up there. We got plenty of content to come throughout the week. We're going to do a show every single day, breaking down post game previews, all that good stuff. We're going to be live from Toronto. You do not want to miss the coverage. Shawn Smith. Before we get out of here, the Source Say podcast is also brought to you by Andy Ludicky and myperfectfranchise.net. Are you ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy? Andy can help. Andy is a franchise consultant as well as franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he is here to help you. If you have any questions about business ownership, you can learn more and contact Andy anytime at www.myperfectfranchise.net. Shawn Smith, where can fans find your work?
You can find my work at gobigbluecountry.com, and you can follow me on Twitter at GBBCountry, and you can actually follow me on Threads at that same that handle. So I guess Threads is sticking around for a little bit, so we'll see how that works out.
That was a whole other mess in itself, getting down to Peach Jam and watching that absolute chaos unfold in real time was just absolute insanity, but I'm here for it. You can find me on Twitter as well at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Same thread on Threads if that's what you're interested in. But find me on Twitter on whatever email as well. jpilgrim@KentuckySportsRadio.com. That will be back tomorrow for the Jam Pack Sources Say podcast, a post game edition of the sort, hopefully breaking down a big win to start out 1-0 up here in Toronto for the 2023 Globl Jam. This has been the Sources Say podcast. We will see you then.